Hello, welcome to the fourth week of SaaS Labs. So for the ones who couldn't join my previous sessions, my name is Merve Soner. I'm one of the business leads on SaaS Factory team. And today's topic is around product launch and communication strategy. I will not be just only focusing on the launch, but also the post-launch product communication that will help you to continuously communicate actually with your customers and users. So if you look at just launching a product, I think we've been covering many aspects up to now, including like how you build that product, how do you define your minimum viable service, how do you define the customer experience, onboarding experience, how do you do the packaging and pricing, which is an upcoming topic, or how do you define your go-to-market? Like, what are your customer segments, your buyer personas, their journey? How do you interact with your channel partners? And now, if we get closer to the launch, so it's really building like a plan with all the stakeholders or internally, and really just moving towards that date and making sure you have a plan just to communicate the launch itself, but also post-launch activities. So today's focus again will be more around those communication strategies, some maybe tactics you could follow, and the main purpose here is to really make sure how you can make your product sticky within your customers. And if you look at the product launch overall, it really takes a village to launch a new product. So it's not just one, like a marketing or product team's responsibilities. There are so many different things that touches different departments, from customer success to finance to product development. So it's definitely a common effort to really get to market with that product launch and making sure it's a successful one. So for any product launch, usually we see organizations building some type of stakeholder team, which has representatives from each department, sharing their own feedback, but also taking away their own key actions to make this launch successful. So again, this is a full overview of like some activities that you should plan for a product launch. But again, today's focus will be around the communications and how do you get to market. So if we start with why is it important? Why are we even talking about like the product communications and why you need to have a strategy? So if you look at this flywheel, we see product communication, an effective communication plan can help with you accelerating the product adoption, customer satisfaction, and revenue growth. So if you think this as a flywheel, as you start doing this communication successfully, then you will see your customers adopting your product, which will hopefully have them quickly realize value out of your products. And then once they start seeing outcomes, then they will want to keep the product. They will want to use it, and this will increase the stickiness of the program, and which will bring you more loyal customers, and in the end, which will help your company to grow. So product communications again play a crucial role in this whole flywheel model. It's also, again, based on this KeyBank Capital Market survey that was done with almost 200 private SaaS companies. We've been talking about all these upsells, the expansions, and how it's important for you to focus on the post-sale process, because that's where that recurring revenue comes, and that's where the growth comes. So this survey actually shows that like among all these companies, 36% of new ARR bookings come from upsells and expansions. So which means these companies are successfully communicating to their customers, and those customers are willing to either expand their usage or buy new product services from these companies. And as you see, as the company size increases, the percentage of revenue increases up to 53%. So again, the whole SaaS model and the recurring revenue model, this upsell and expansion piece is quite important, and product communications is again one key part of this growth. And when we talk about communications, it's actually not only to customers. I think you should think it through internal and external stakeholders. So internally, again, all this communications should be very transparent within your organization, meaning sales, marketing, customer success, training, executives. They should all be aware what's coming, what's being communicated. And externally, to not only to your customers, but also it could be your investors, your partners, the analysts, or even the media. So again, you should, like, the communication plan that you target should really focus on all these different stakeholders. Today, for the sake of time, we will mostly be focusing on customer targeted communications, but you can easily take that information and kind of repurpose it for other stakeholders that you interact with. But definitely do not overlook all these different personas or stakeholders that are interested in your product. So how do you build a plan? How do you build a communication strategy? So it's basically similar to any probably marketing plan or any growth plan you may see. But if we just look at each step one by one, and I'll try to kind of add some questions that you need to ask for each step, and and share some examples around each of them. So basically, I just want to introduce a 5-step process for you to build your plan, starting with setting the goals and timeline, defining target audience, building the content, picking the right channel, and finally measuring and optimizing the whole plan. So let's start with the first one. So setting the goals and timeline. So at this stage, it's really more about defining the scope of your product updates, what's coming, how it impacts your customers, and what is your goal, basically, like when you announce this new product. And again, it could be a whole new product launch, but it could also be a new version that you are launching, or it could be a new feature you are introducing. So whatever you are launching, you can still follow this 5-step approach to build your plan. But again, it's important, based on what you are launching, it's important to set your goals and really define what you are trying to achieve and the timeline around that. So again, at this stage, a couple of questions you could ask internally. Okay, is this a minor product update, or is it something big? Is it like a product launch? Obviously, they may require different attention from your team and your customers. So you first need to define, which category the update you would like to provide falls into. And then, depending on your new feature or product launch, you should define the goal. And the goal could be really maybe just creating some awareness. It could be around the adoption of the new feature that you are launching, or you could even tie it to a revenue. Okay, I am launching this product, and this is kind of my revenue target. But make sure you have this goal in the beginning so that you can really track your progress. The other piece to think at this point is, how are your customers impacted? So some of the updates, some of the launches may not apply to all of your customers. So it may be only relevant for a set of customers. And in that case, or in other cases, it could apply to all customers, but some customers may need additional support to maybe train their own employees to communicate this with their own employees. So when you do this, like the whole goals and timeline, definitely think through how your customers are impacted and what additional steps you may need to, or support you may need to provide for them. And the other piece you need to think through is the timing of these communications, because sometimes organizations just launch their product and they just communicate all these updates the day on the day of the launch, and then they are all done. But in some cases, especially if you have customers who are already using your products, and if that's a update that impacts how they use the product, you may need to think before the launch communications, because if there's an upcoming, let's say, UI change that will significantly impact the user experience, then you should definitely provide some heads up to your customers in advance so that they could prepare their own employees for this new launch. And then definitely look at, again, depending on how you interact with your customers or your product, there might be some commitments that you make to your customers around letting them know around any upcoming launches or any version changes. So definitely keep that in mind as well when you set the timeline and the goals. And also be prepared for any unexpected issues. So usually, again, the product like communications plan, you can plan in advance, especially for those big launch or like the big features coming up. But if there is a bug or kind of a system outage that impacts many of your customers, definitely be prepared to communicate that as well. So have a plan, an emergency plan around who is doing what and what the timeline will look like. So once you define this first step, once you complete this first step, now it's time to define your target audience. Again, I think this has been something we talk when you design your product, when you design your go-to-market. So this is definitely something when you should think through when you plan your communication strategy. And usually organizations tend to reach out to technical users or admins when there is a product update or a new product introduction. But I think this is definitely there's some missed opportunity here. In your product communications, you should consider other stakeholders within your customers, such as the business leaders or executives. So definitely just creating maybe some technical like knowledge documents or technical documentation may help your key users, admins, to kind of implement or to use new products. But definitely try to reach a broader audience with your communications. So in that case, a few questions to ask at this stage. Really think through who are your stakeholders, and are you effectively reaching out to them when you make an announcement or when you do a communication. And also try to understand if you as an organization, do you have visibility into your customers? Like, okay, you may be interacting with maybe a few key people, but do you know how do they fit into their organization? Do you know who they might be working with? Are there any indirect users of your product, which you might want to include to this whole plan? And then definitely keep that, the target audience list up to date. Sometimes we see like when you acquire new customers, maybe you get some email addresses and some phone numbers that you can reach out to them. But definitely make sure they are up to date, because that will help you with your reach when you launch or when you make a communication. And again, when you're defining the target audience, similar to the previous question, just really think through who would be impacted, who are the target of this launch or this new update that needs to hear about this. So after the second step, if we move to the third one, it's really about building your messaging, building your content right. Because again, if we talk through all these different stakeholders, and if you like to reach out to all of them, definitely the detail of the information they are interested in, or or the overall content they're interested in will be different. So think through, okay, these are my target audiences. Maybe I have executives within them. I might have admin users. I might have end users. So really, what's important for them? What do they care about? Do they really need to know about this? What type of information they need from you? The second piece is really more about the adoption and the training. So especially if there is a change or if there's a new product launch that impacts the end user experience, definitely think through a plan that will enable them to adopt those new features or products. How can they successfully use it? How can they train their teams to use it successfully? And what are some of the benefits? Like when you communicate this whole updates, just do not focus on what the product can do or what is changing. Definitely focus on the business benefits. So what was your motivation to launch this new feature, new product? How customers can benefit from it? Definitely think through that business aspect and provide that message in your content. And also try to, of course, as always, A/B test your message. So try to change your messaging a little bit. Maybe you can divide your customers into a couple of groups. You can test different messages, but definitely try until you find your product's voice within your customers. Then the fourth step is, okay, we picked the goal, we picked the audience, we picked the content. Now it's really more about finding the right channel to reach out to your target audience. So especially if you keep your target audience broad, which would include both business and technical users, in that case, you should also look for strategies that will enable multiple channels to communicate with them. Because for some, for example, again, for technical audience, kind of a more detailed documentation might be more helpful. Whereas for business audience, maybe it is just a short email that they are interested in. So definitely think through all these different channels and find the best way to reach out to your target audience. And you could even, so it doesn't need to be one channel per audience or per persona. You could definitely use multiple channels, such as your website, the blog posts, email, to really create an immersive experience for your target audience. And again, if this is an upcoming, like a launch, a big feature introduction, then really think through, like, working with your marketing team to see if you can really put some marketing budget behind this, either with some physical virtual events or having some type of digital campaign, whether it's a paid advertisement or other source. So definitely think through this, which may really bring additional eyeballs to your new launch. And again, definitely A/B test your channels. You need to understand where your target audience is, what they follow. So definitely try to kind of get feedback first around the success of these channels, but also try to use different channels just to see if they work for your audience. And while you do all this, of course, do not forget about the permission-based marketing, because some of these new announcements could be seen as a new, like, kind of marketing to your customers. So, and especially with GDPR and other regulations in EMEA and other regions, definitely make sure you have their permission to communicate with them. So here I'd like to share a few examples before we move to step 5, which is the measuring and optimization. I'd like to share some examples of how AWS and a few other companies use different channels and content types for product communication. So my first example is, this is a series that AWS really maintains for almost up in every new service or some new feature for the existing services. What happens is that we publish these short videos a few minutes long. And each week, Jeff Barr, who is one of the evangelists of AWS, he talks through a new update. So this is, I think, this video format really is a very engaging format, especially for maybe that business or executive audience who just want to really understand what is coming in a nutshell rather than understanding all the details. So definitely having this type of repository for your new releases might be one option you could look at. But on the other side, of course, there will be some other personas that will be interested in a deep dive. So they will like to understand how the new feature will work, how the new product will work, what the experience will look like. And in that case, you may kind of still use the video format, but maybe record a little bit longer version of that initial update, where you have really a technical expert who could go through all the updates, how to maybe even enable them, or how it would impact your usage of product. So you could do it as again like a recorded video, or you could even have some like a live office hours using some other channels such as Twitch. So this definitely helps your users to understand what's coming in details. The other option could be, again, just keeping a blog, a website, microsite that you, again, summarize all the new announcements. So again, within AWS, we have this page called What's New. And when you go to this page, you could see all the recent updates coming out of all these AWS services. So it also makes it easier for people to go back to history and check what's been done up to now. So this is also definitely a good way to keep track of all the upcoming updates. Another channel you can use, which is really rising nowadays, is again the podcasts. If you feel like you can really build your audience on this channel, and you could be you could continue to do that, because obviously some of these examples require some investment, some commitment from your end. So usually when you just launch one video and just maybe don't do it later on, it may not have the impact that you expect. So I think with all these examples, the consistency of your communication is important. So definitely look for what type of resources you may need, and if they can commit to do, again, like either it's a video or this podcast series, definitely have a plan for like this midterm, long-term communication plan when you pick one of these channels. So again, podcast is another example where you can either just discuss the upcoming updates, you can have guest speakers from your customers who might talk on behalf of you, but definitely one channel that may help you to reach out to your audience. Other more common probably approach is really having these release notes on the website. Again, this is more for technical audience who might be really interested in all the details around what's coming. So again, this is also, I think, a good repository of what's being done with your product up to now. So you can also consider kind of a section on your website that has all the release notes up to now. Other more creative ways could be, again, combining multiple channels. So you could send an email as always, but especially if you embed videos to these emails on top of some existing text, it may make it more interesting for your users. So this is, for example, an example from Vistia, where they again communicate all the updates through this embedded email to their customers. And other interesting way to do product communications is just using the product itself. So basically, if you already have your product out, and if you have customers using that, and if it is kind of a new product launch or even some new module that you are launching, you could really use your product and just build this notification system which will let your customers, your users know about what is new. And then you can kind of design an in-product experience. Maybe they can even look through all the new updates and how to use them. So definitely this requires more planning on the product side, maybe some updates on the product side, but definitely a good way to reach out to your target audience, because if they're already using your product, then you don't need an extra channel to reach out to them or to draw their attention. And again, like the permission-based marketing, as we talk, again, especially if you have more than one product portfolio and you may have different types of updates for your products, really just try to provide options for your audience. So let them opt in or opt out for a certain type of communication. So, for example, some of your users might be interested in hearing about the system outages or any type of issues going on with the product, but may not opt in for any new features or any other marketing related communication. So if you provide that preference to them, then they could pick what they're interested in, and then you will have a more effective communications plan because you are just communicating what they are interested in. Okay, so we looked through the four step, and now let's look at the last step, which is measuring and optimization of your plan. So in the beginning, again, we talked through setting goals, right? Setting broader business goals, but you should also look for some metrics, some KPIs that will help you track the success of your campaign. So in that case, again, look through some metrics. Which is most important to you? Is it about reach, like reaching out to a broader audience? Is it more about engagement, making sure they kind of somehow communicate with you? Or is it more about adoption? Is it really just increasing the product usage? And when you do this planning, again, we always talk through the importance of customer feedback, even in your product design. So here it's also important, like when you do your communications, definitely provide a channel for your customers to provide feedback, either about the new feature, new launch you did, or even for the communication itself. But definitely keep a channel open for your customers so that they can provide feedback. And then again, just let them pick the right channel, right content that works for them. And again, once you build this plan, it's not set on the stone. So you could always go back and optimize your plan based on what worked and what hasn't. And you can definitely look at those the KPIs, metrics you put, as well as the feedback from your customers. So if you look at some of the sample metrics to track, like you build your communication strategy, what you can be tracking. So if you look at the reach metrics, usually organizations track the email delivery rate. This kind of gives you an idea how up to date your database is. You can look at click to open rate. That shows, okay, if people are really interested in the content you shared. You can look at if you are kind of maybe directing them to a specific web page about your launch. You can look at the page views, unique visitors. If if this was a big product launch and if you followed some ARPR strategies, definitely look at the coverage, like how was it covered by various channels? Did it see or what was the engagement rate? What was the reach through those channels? And you could definitely track the social media, just looking at what the shares are, what your reach is, and definitely encourage your employees to share this old updates as well. That will help you with reaching to a broader audience. And when it comes to engagement, you could really look at, again, depending on your communication channel, you could look at a number of downloads or views. You could look at like how much time your customers spend on your website to maybe understand what's new. You could look at the overall customer feedback, the bounce rate, conversion rate, which will help you to understand, again, how active or how interested your customers are. And then finally, you could look at the product or feature adoption, which is probably the most important metric here, because in the end, everything you do before this is to really drive some eyeballs to your product. So definitely make sure the product feature adoption is part of your metrics. And in this case, you could look at, okay, if there was a trial of what you launch, you could look at like how many customers signed up for this free trial. And then, or if it is a kind of a new feature within an existing product, using product analytics, you could look at the user behavior and see like the percentage of your users who start using your new feature. Or overall, in the kind of midterm, long term, you could look at customer retention, because in the end, all these updates communications are to really keep your product competitive, but also to keep your customers happy with your product. So you could look at the overall retention as a metric. And if it is again a new product launch, you could look at the new revenue coming through that. And finally, like around the customer feedback, you could look at NPS or CSAT scores that may help you to understand if all these updates were helpful for your customers or not. And finally, some additional thoughts again from TSIA. They did again a survey with some SaaS companies to see how they really use this data. So in the previous slide, I tried to explain how you can use that information to measure the success of your product communications, but that information will actually help you in other places. So for example, on the renewal side, on the post-sale side, you can really use this information as part of your renewal discussions. So when it comes to renewing their contract, you could look at the usage metrics and say, well, we'll look at this data and see that your organization adopted the new feature we just launched, or your organization utilizes the system X%. So that's really a strong argument when it's time to do all the renewal conversations. It's also a good indicator for your team to understand the customer health, how happy they are with you, even before having an actual NPS or CSAT survey. Or again, you could you look at some patterns in the usage and product adoption and use that information maybe to cross-sell, upsell to other customers. And on the product side, this information is also very helpful because, again, this may be a great input to your product roadmap, depending on, again, what your customers are interested in. You could really shape your roadmap around that. Or you could even think through some of the gaps that the customers may experience and use this information maybe even to launch new services or new products for your customers. So again, just to sum up, this 5-step process should give you a good start to start planning for your communication strategy. And even before starting that 5-step process, if you take a step back, my suggestion would be really take a snapshot of where you are right now, what your external communication activities look like, where you may have some gaps, and then really try to build all these strategies from everything from minor bugs to a big product announcement. And again, don't forget to target audiences beyond your customers, including your employees, partners, and investors. They definitely need to be up to date with what's coming, and they need to be trained to help your customers to really be successful with all the new launches. And again, timing here is important. So probably you want to let your employees and partners know what's coming before your customers. And then definitely do not let the plan, just go and, operate itself. Try to make sure you have the right mechanisms, the metrics, KPIs to track your performance. And definitely tie this communication plan to some sort of a product adoption goal or a revenue goal that will help you better understand the business impact of your product plan. So yeah, with that, I'd like to pause here